Okay, I feel like that's close enough to 10 seconds. Welcome, folks, oh, welcome, folks, to our monthly Big High speaker series. And for those of you for whom this might be a new experience that is joining us here at Big High, a little bit about Big High. Oh, let me start my little sharing. Make sure these things are out of the way. So tonight I will have Jared Spool presenting a topic for us. Just before we get to that, we'll have a little bit of an introduction here for BayChi. BayChi is founded in 1989. We're a volunteer-based organization that is the local San Francisco Bay Area chapter of ACM Sig Chi. There's a couple of our parent and grandparent organizations, both having members all around the world. The second Tuesday of every month, we have this free speaker presentation. And next month, we'll have Don Norman joining us to introduce his newest book. Just some of our activities coming up. We also have a UX field trip to Intuitive Surgical. I think that's likely to have a cap of around 12 people. We anticipate the tour to allow folks a chance to play with the robot itself. And so that's sort of a few minutes for each person. That could potentially get out of hand. That's sort of a lunchtime-ish thing. You're welcome to join us. You can sign up for that field trip on our website, baychi.org. But we just did a fun trip to air traffic control, a facility here in Fremont, overseeing a lot of the traffic that comes in and going out over the Pacific Ocean. Some of our other activities we've got so our speaker presentation is on the second Tuesdays of each month. That's done, as you see here, over Zoom. Our other BOFs, that's birds of a feather, so subgroups of our BayChi, also done over Zoom. We have on third Tuesdays a BOF that is about UX tools. So not sure about the topic for this coming meeting on that. That's the next week, Tuesday. But the fourth Tuesdays is just a general UX life and careers, networking, socializing hour, again, over Zoom that I host. And that's just come check in. If you've got a portfolio that you want people to review, it's of an open agenda. So that depends on whoever's there, whatever it is they bring with them. All these things you can join, you can appreciate most for free, or you can join us as members to help support our efforts and offset whatever our little costs are around Zoom, ultimately going back to physical co-presence as an option as well. That's an annual cost of $20. Wait, has this not changed?
That has changed, sorry. I just was reading it myself.
Okay.
$20 a year.
It's $20 a year. And so that provides, sort of the activities that I enumerated there, along with a newsletter, job banks, consult, and a few other things. Moving on. As I mentioned, we are a volunteer-led organization. And so especially coming up in June, so plenty of time, so that you have plenty of time to consider, we will be holding elections for our 3 officers, that is chair, vice chair, and treasurer. So currently we're looking for an official treasurer, and listed on this page. Also, you'll see some of the other things that we're looking for. If you are interested in a particular topic that you want to gather people around, that's what a Birds of a Feather group is for. And so if you've got an idea that you want to chat with people about, we're happy to have you come chat with us and see if that might, if holding a BOF might be something that you'd enjoy, right? And moving here. Oh, so one of our higher profile volunteer roles is program chair, and it is our program chairs that bring us the fantastic speakers that we have each month. Responsible for tonight's speaker bringing them to us is Nancy Frischberg. So let me bring her on here as this month's co-chair.
Hi, everybody. Let me see if I can spotlight myself. I'm co-chair of BayChi, and as we were talking earlier, we realized that I'm only the co-chair for alternate months, and Ted Selker has joined us as co-chair with me. And I work with Smita Popolo. Some of you have met her also, and to run what is this? The odd months. Yes, that must be me, odd. And I'm really excited to have Jared Spool back with BayChi. I think this is your third appearance over the 30 years that we've been in existence. And I'm amazed that we haven't heard from you more recently. You've been busy, Jared. So right?
Might be fourth.
Might be fourth. Well, I'm looking at the thing here. I can say the future ain't what it used to be was 2004. And I can see that in September of 2010, you were here revealing design treasures from the Amazon. And in August of 2000, you were just giving us your latest research from UIE. So was there another one that I missed in here? There was one that got canceled.
Well, that's three. That's three. So yeah. So this is the fourth.
This is the fourth, number 4, right? And always entertaining to talk to Jared about his work. And I know that since you were last here, you've now started a school, and maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that, but I know you really want to communicate with us about how to help people accomplish good things with UX without being lectured at about what the heck UX is. Jared and I have known each other for since Mumble the years. I met you at the BayChi, at the Chi meetings, but I'm not sure which one, 89, 90, one of those.
Yeah.
When you were testing out some of your seminars. So I got to be in the prototype version of that. And that was always fun. And we've had some lovely dinners together. And I look forward to more of them when we can be in the same time zone. And without further ado, let me share Jared's. Let me let Jared replace me as the spotlight. There you go. You're on.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Nancy, for inviting me. Thank you to the always mysterious Steve Williams for helping produce these, and everybody else, Edwin, and everybody else who's involved. It is always an honor to be able to talk with you here at these events, and I'm excited that I get to do it one more time. Hold
on one sec. I want to jump in and remind people, if you're watching on YouTube, we may have some interactivity available for you when it gets to question time. So be aware that you can interact with us inside the Zoom room or via YouTube.
There you go.
Thank you.
So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to speak for probably about half an hour. I've got some notes to go through, and then we'll take questions. You can put any questions you have at any point into the chat. Just say question for Jared, and my colleague Angela is going to collect them all up, and then when we get to the Q&A, And she's looking at the YouTube chat too. So at the comments. So you can put your questions there too. And when we get to the Q&A, if you're in the Zoom room, I'll actually ask you to unmute, and you and I can have a conversation about the question. If we take it from YouTube, that's not going to work. I don't have a way to do that, but we'll figure something out. Angela will ask your question on your behalf, and we'll go from there. Yeah. So I think that's all the business part of this. So let's just get to the meat of the thing. I was thinking about this presentation, and what I keep coming back to is this a particular television episode from my childhood. I'm thinking of the show I Love Lucy, and there was this episode where Lucy and Ethel, for some reason that I have no recollection of, found themselves in working in a chocolate factory, and there's a particular scene in the chocolate factory where they're sort of working at this conveyor belt, and Lucy and Ethel are there, and there's the conveyor belt is built into a wall, and they have the sort of responsibility. That's not what I want to, more like that. They have the responsibility of dealing with chocolates as they come down the conveyor belt, and the chocolates are coming through, and they're supposed to take each chocolate and wrap it up in a little wrapper and send it on down back into the hole for it to go someplace else. And they're told by whoever it is who is managing them, supervising them, that they can't let any chocolates go through unwrapped. And at first, it seems quite reasonable. They're not having trouble. That seems like a pretty easy job. But pretty soon, the number of chocolates starts to increase, and they start to fall behind on the wrappings, and the speed of the belt starts to get faster and faster and faster, and they can't keep up. And this phenomena of making sure that chocolate's wrapped, it quickly becomes hilarious in that they have to, they don't want to let any chocolates go through unwrapped, so they start shoving them into their pockets, and they're wearing hats, and they start putting them into the hats, and they shove them into their mouths, and it's and the reason I'm telling you about all this is that this is what modern day UX practice sort of feels like. It's become this sort of conveyor belt of work where you have to go faster and faster and faster. You have to get all your research done. You have to get all your wireframes built. You have to get all your personas done before the sprint ends. And if you don't do that, you get yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's the problem here, is that we've created this sort of feature factory approach to building things. Some of that is an outcome of the move to Agile, but a lot of it is just this notion that everything's about the production of features, and everything about UX is making sure we deliver features. The idea that we're now all sort of product designers means that what we work on are products and we deliver products. That's what comes out the end of the conveyor belt. And all of this leaves us at this place where we are in many ways just sort of trying to keep up as best we can and falling behind, and it's demoralizing. You don't have to work really hard to find any number of Twitter threads or LinkedIn posts of people who are just on the verge of giving up or potentially already have given up in order to because this is not what they signed up for. This is not the work that they wanted to do, and they find this incredibly frustrating and draining and exhausting, not energizing at all. And that's the feeling that we're seeing a lot of people have. And part of this is because the UX practice in general has sort of gravitated to these deliverables, right? That we spend our time building personas and running usability tests and creating wireframes and filling up Figma files. And all of these things are basic, just sort of deliverables for what the work is. And if you ask people, what does a UX person do? They start to list all these things and say, well, I do personas and I run usability tests and I create wireframes and I do Figma files and I create design systems. And it's always about the deliverables. Journey maps, that's another one that we do a lot of. And the thing about all of these things is that they are basically outputs, right? What we are sort of reconciled to at this point are producing outputs for our work. But the thing about outputs is that there's no notion of quality in an output, right? We can't tell if the personas are good personas, if they match who our users really are, if they have something that actually matches the people that we're trying to work with. And in fact, personas themselves tend to be quite problematic. I'm realizing that this is probably unreadable. The font I've chosen for tonight is sans legibility. I apologize for that. But there's no notion of quality in an output. We can't tell if the designs in the Figma file are any good, if the design system is effective. That's a separate condition of what's going on. And the problem with outputs is that they are they're just basically the practice of producing something and sending it out the window on the other side of the wall. We don't have a good sense at all as to whether what is happening there, whether that's having any sort of important impact on the world. And so what we found is what we want to focus on instead of outputs are outcomes. Outcomes, unlike outputs, are not what we deliver. Outcomes are the change that happens in the world because of what we deliver. And the thing about outcomes is that because it's a change, change can go in one of two directions. We can either change for the better, or we can change for the worse. And so it's inherent in change as to whether we have added quality or not. This is built into the notion of change. And so instead of thinking in terms of outputs, what we find is that more successful UX leaders are now beginning to focus on outcomes. And that the outcomes that they're focusing on are outcomes that are basically a positive change in the world. And this shift is a shift from what we call being reactive, where we're in this chocolate factory and we have no control over the chocolates that are being put onto the conveyor belt. We just have to make sure that none of them go unwrapped as they move out of the conveyor belt. And so we're at the complete mercy of who or whatever is on this side of the wall without having any way to talk about it. And that's a reactive situation where we find out about what we're working on, like the day the project starts, and we're then told that the sprint is going to be 2 weeks long or 3 weeks long or whatever the time box quantity is. And we have to do these things in that period. And it's basically being locked into that sort of chocolate factory conveyor belt of things. And we don't get a chance to ask the question, how do we make things better? The focus on outcomes, this is proactive because this starts with a question. And the question is, if we do a great job on this feature or on this product or on this service, whatever it is, how will we improve someone's life? This is what we call a UX outcome. The answer to this question is a UX outcome. If we do a great job, how will we improve someone's life? As I mentioned, an outcome can either make something better or worse. And nobody I know who works in UX intentionally tries to make things worse. So we're always looking at the improvement. What is the improvement that we can make to someone's life? And so the outcome that we focus on turns out to be a question that that, or the answer to this question, this idea that when we are working at our best, we better be improving someone's life. After all, if we're not improving someone's life, why are we doing this work? What is the point of doing this if it's not going to make some difference in the lives of somebody? And this question changes everything. If you start asking this question, you will notice a change in your organization, because it will be the first time that we are actually talking about something human-centered in that process that isn't forced. It brings this intention, and we're not talking about UX. We're not explaining why we do personas, or why we do usability tests, or why we create these Figma files with layers, and why we do journey maps. We're talking about, if we do a great job, how do we improve somebody's life? And so this turns out to be a game-changing question. And that's sort of the core of what we're talking about here. Now, the way we get to the answer here, there's a bunch of ways we can get to the answer, but the one that I'm going to focus on tonight is this idea that we have to start by understanding someone's experience. So think about your product, think about your service, think about the experience that somebody has. And there's a chance that experience unfolds over time. And so there's a bunch of things that person does with your product, or does to accomplish their goals, and your product somehow plays a role in that. There's a bunch of these things, and each of these sort of vertical lines that I'm drawing here represents something that they do, some milestone in the process of accomplishing whatever their goal is. And we can measure that by actually watching a real person. So we're going to go watch a real person. Person's name is Edna. And Edna's real. Edna's not some imaginary person, not some arbitrary archetype, some synthesis of all the people we've ever met. Edna's a real person. We've gone and we're sitting with Edna, and we're watching Edna go through these various steps. And we can see Edna walking through each of these steps, doing what Edna does. And we can measure what Edna's doing on a scale of extreme frustration to extreme delight. And in the process of watching Edna, what we see is whatever the first step to this thing is. Let's say she's booking her ideal vacation somewhere. She gets to the website that has possible places for her to stay. That's somewhat delightful for her. But then over time, the next step starts to get frustrating, because she can't tell whether she's near the center of town or not. She also gets very frustrated because she can't get a clear answer as to whether the rooms that she's staying at are non-smoking rooms. The last time she stayed at someplace, the room just reeked of smoke, and it made her allergies flare up, and she was just miserable for her entire vacation. So she's very sensitive. She wants a guarantee of some sort that there's not going to be smoke in the room left over from a previous guest. But she finds the room and decides that she's going to book it anyways, and so that's fine. But then when she gets into the booking process, suddenly it starts complaining about her credit card. It doesn't like her credit card. She gets an error message because for some reason, in 2023, we still complain that phone numbers are not allowed to have spaces or dashes, even though computers could easily fix that. But she makes it through the booking process, and it turns delightful again, and she gets excited about her vacation. And so we can map out on this simple journey here of Edna what parts of it were frustrating for Edna and what parts of it were delightful for Edna. And we can easily see when that happens. And that gives us a sense as to what Edna's current experience is. So this line represents her current experience. And that idea of the current experience is key, because it's from that idea that we can then ask the question, well, what if we made this experience delightful for Edna all the way across? What if every step of this process of booking this vacation was absolutely delightful? She could tell how close to the center of town it was. She could see that the room is guaranteed to not have any remnants of smoke in it. The checkout process or the booking process took her credit card, took her phone number without complaint. We could even see how they could provide better pictures, how they could give her more reassurance on the quality of the stay. And what we're trying to do is raise all this frustration and get to this ideal experience. And the important thing here is that this is an aspirational experience that's going to take us a bit of work to get to. But we can now see it in contrast to the experience that Edna had. Now, of course, we're not going to just look at Edna's experience and decide what to build. We're going to go out and we're going to look at a bunch of people's experiences, and we're going to see what all their experiences are like. And we're going to see that some people have radically different experiences, but other people have experiences that feel very similar in lots of ways. And so what we're going to see from this is, this is Jessica's experience, and this is Paul's experience, and this is Irina's experience. And what we're going to see from all of these experiences is that there are some patterns that emerge, that in fact, there is a pattern around the room descriptions not being clear about certain things that people find important in their stays. And there is a pattern around the checkout process giving error messages that are problematic because people can't predict what the database wants for certain types of data. And so we can see that those patterns happen, so that this aspirational experience actually would not only be better for Edna, but it would reduce support calls, and maybe it would get more completed bookings. There'd be fewer drop-offs. So we can see that by collecting up data qualitatively and then potentially mapping onto it some signals we get from quantitative data, that these experiences could be improved. But the important thing to note here is that we are looking at Edna's experience. That's what we're studying. We're not studying the product. This is not a description of the product. This is a description of the experience that Edna has. And in fact, we could start our map of Edna's experience way before she uses the product, when she's just thinking about where she wants to go on vacation. And we could continue beyond this, looking at her actual stay and seeing how the promises that were made on the website mapped the stay that she actually had. And so we can look at the whole experience all the way across. And we're not constrained by the bounds of the product. And it's that perception of what the current experience looks like that allows us to start to see what the UX outcome could be. Because that current experience that Edna had where we could see that there were frustrating bits and delightful bits. And we could ask the question, what would it look like if it was delightful all the way across? That answer to being delightful, that becomes our UX outcome. If we do a great job on Edna's experience, how do we improve Edna's life? And that's the thing we're shooting for. We have succeeded when we have improved Edna's life. And so this idea that there's a current experience, which is, we could think of as a baseline experience for where we are today, and this outcome, this future experience that we want to achieve, that's what we're talking about. Now, in the feature factory, the first thing we jump to is some sort of solution, right? What does it look like? What is the product? What are we going to build? What is the thing that we're going to ship? And that solution is important. I mean, we have to ship something in order to get to the outcome. But it's not the end of the journey. The end is attaining the outcome, not delivering the output. The solution is an output. And so we don't want to jump there quickly. In fact, the first thing we want to do is we want to ask the question, what's preventing Edna? Because remember, this is all about Edna. We're keeping this human-centered, and Edna's the human we're putting in the center. What's preventing Edna from getting these outcomes today by herself without us doing anything? And that becomes the problems that we have to solve. We can literally make a list. Uh-oh, my purple pen is dying. Well, goodbye, purple pen. Hello, new purple pen. So what is preventing Edna from getting this? Well, there's a list of problems. I mean, it's literally a list. And so we create the list of problems that Edna, we need to solve in order for Edna to get the outcome. That's informed from the current experience. That informs the solution we want to build. And that hopefully generates the outcome. But we're iterating, right? We're in design mode, we're iterating, and it may not get the outcome. But if it doesn't get the outcome, what happens is it informs our list of problems to solve. We now know that we have more definition to the problems that we have to solve. And so, because I see Indy in the audience, this here is what we might call the problem space. And this area here is the solution space. But notice that the outcome exists outside of the problem space or the solution space. The outcome is this change in the world that happens when we have improved Edna's life. And one way to think about all this is that it's a goal of a good organization, a really truly human-centered, focused organization, to become the world's foremost experts in the problems and the current experience. There's an old saying, which is great designers don't fall in love with their solutions. Great designers fall in love with the problems. It's the list of problems that we're trying to solve that we want to fall in love with. And we can only fall in love with that when we really understand the experience that Edna's having, that Jessica's having, that Paul's having, that Arena's having. All of these things inform our expertise. And there's absolutely no reason why our organizations can't be the world's foremost experts in the problems that our users have that we have to solve. This absolutely is how we say we don't want to be experts in solutions. Solutions come and go. I mean, we have to know about them. We have to know how they work. We have to know how to build them. But that's not where our true expertise needs to be built. Our expertise needs to be built in the current experience and the problems that have to be solved. And so that's sort of this diagram here is what we call the schematic. And the schematic is, this is the UX outcome schematic. And it basically represents, I'm going to blame everything on East Coast time. That's what I'm going to do. It basically represents what we need to think about in order to make sure that we are being proactive. If we work purely on solutions, we're reactive. In fact, Jen Cardello at Fidelity talks about how when she got to Fidelity, she found that 85% of her team's work was being focused on solutions, and that less than 15% was being focused. She heads up research for Fidelity. So 15% of the research efforts were being spent on understanding the user's experience and the problems they have to solve. She spent a year reversing that, pushing them so that 85% of their effort was understanding the experience and the problems, and less than 15% was understanding the solutions. And they saw a dramatic increase in the quality of the products they produced and the improvements they were making to the lives of their customers, their brokers, all the people involved. So there's real business rewards to doing this. And in the process of doing this, because the focus is on the experience that real people are having, we are making the whole process more human-centered. And we're doing it without lecturing people on what it means to be human-centered. We don't have to define usability, UX, human-centered, design. We don't have to define any of those things. All we have to do is ask the question, if we do a great job, how do we improve somebody's life? That's the only question we have to answer. And that changes everything. What we're doing when we're working on this is this aspirational experience is, in essence, a vision. And a vision is key to leadership. Leaders lead by having a vision that people want to follow. And the easiest way I found to sort of talk about a vision is we can think about where we are today. So this point is today. And if we proceed the way we've been proceeding and we do nothing different, we're going to get to another point, some time in the future. And, it could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now, it could be 15 years from now. It doesn't really matter. And this future point is going to be the same as today if we do nothing different. If we just keep being reactive and do our best to just keep working in the feature factory, the chocolate conveyor belt, if we just keep doing that, we're going to end up, we have a bunch of problems today that we aren't solving, and we're going to have exactly the same problems in the future, unsolved. But people who are leaders, in particular UX leaders, they can imagine a better future. And that better future is a point that is, well, better. And that better future is not today. It solves these problems. The problems here are solved. And it's the difference between this future, this better future, and the world that we have today that makes up the vision, right? It's our ability to describe the difference between the future that happens if we do nothing different and the future that happens if we decide to be better. And the important point to note here is that we're not describing the work we're going to do to get there. We're just describing the better future. We have to come up with a future that's so much better that everybody gets excited. If we can generate excitement about this better future, then people get bought into it. And it's then and only then that we can have a conversation about what is the path that we're going to have to take as an organization to get to that better future. And this path is when we do something different than what we've been doing. And so that's what's key. Where a lot of UX people get trapped is they start to talk about what we need to be doing differently without establishing up front what the better future looks like. And of course, doing something different seems expensive and costly and hard to imagine. So nobody buys into it. They just want to keep doing what we've been doing because they can't see the difference. We have to help them see the difference of this better future. We have to get them to see that first, get them to want it so much that they're willing to do all the things, all the hard work to get there. And the UX leaders who I see do this by turning back to Edna's experience. Because that better future is this aspirational experience. And it's because we've done a fantastic job of showing how miserable we make Edna's life today with the choices we have made. And so what we want to do is to make different choices, come up with an aspirational experience that leads us to a better future. And that better future will not only be better for Edna, but it'll be better for Jessica and Paul and Irina, and so much better that people will pay for it because it adds value. The buzzword in business these days is value adding. And we in UX can talk specifically to value adding, because if we eliminate the frustration and increase the delight, we get people to pay more for the things that we do. And that's how we get to a better future. And everything we do, our roadmaps, our metrics, everything we do has to be outcome driven. has to have that future. If we do a good job, how are we improving people's lives? Those are the outcomes. We should be able to point to everything in the roadmap and ask the question, if we do a great job on that thing, how will it improve somebody's life? If we can't answer that question, why is it on the roadmap? Every single one of our metrics has to be measuring the improvement in people's lives. Have we improved it or not? If our metrics don't tell us whether we've improved someone's life or not, why are we tracking it? Everything has to go back to this idea that there's a list of problems to solve in order to get the outcome. Do we have a shared understanding of those problems? And here's the thing, the people we work with, the developers, the product managers, if they have that shared understanding, they look past the solution and they focus on the problems. The solution is just a temporary means to an end. We'll have a better solution to solve the problems after the one we ship today. We don't fall in love with our solutions, we fall in love with our problems. And that's the process. What we're doing here is we're adding meaning. Meaning, a way to define meaning in someone's work is, by doing my work, do I improve someone else's life? That's meaningful. Am I making the world a better place for others with the work that I do? The more meaning we put into the workplace, the more excited people get about doing that. And we've done all of this without ever having to define UX, without ever having to fight to get UX practices into place. All of that happens because we have added meaning to the work. And that's what I came to talk to you about. We'll take some questions. Just put them in the chat. And then we'll see what we can do. In the meantime, we have a community where I talk about these things all the time. It's called Leaders of Awesomeness, and it's free. You can join it. There are 44,000 UX leaders in this community. I'm not hyperbolizing, actually. I did exaggerate a little. It's 43,841 as of this morning. But we have that many UX leaders in this community, and you can join it for free. And we have conversations every week about how do we accomplish the types of things that I've been talking about here. And so, including live, every Monday, we have a live Talk UX strategy session where 200 to 300 people come and we talk through these types of things. So if you're interested in that, you can check out Leaders of Awesomeness. But for now, I'm happy to answer any questions, or even happier if we don't have any questions and I can get to bed. But it looks like we're going to have a question here. So it looks like we're going to have a few. So Angela, why don't you help me out here? Let's start with the first question.
Okay. Mary Parks question. is what about when we're working on something new? How does the process you're describing change?
Well, that's a great question. Mary, can you say a little bit more about that? Maybe you can unmute and add a little context here.
Yeah, so first of all, yay, I love the talk.
Oh, good. What'd you like?
It's very inspiring, actually. Yeah, so a lot of times, I work in voice interaction design, and a lot of times the products are new. It's not an existing product. And so I have ideas about, based on what you're saying, that I'm very, how I would modify the process for something that's new, where we can't say what's the current experience. But I would love to hear what you're.
So say a little bit more about what these products do for people. I mean, I understand that they're voice user interfaces, but my guess is nobody wakes up in the morning excited because they're going to get to talk to a computer. What are they actually using this for?
Just for one example, like let's say my hands are busy, so I'm going to be using speech at a distance to something to retrieve information, for example.
What kind of information?
I want to know who won. I didn't get to watch the Oscars, and I want to know who won.
Okay.
Something like that. And I'm having a conversation, and the typical far field speech recognition thing would be, you're having a conversation with someone, and you just want to get a quick answer to it. There's no screens around, so there's a device that you could talk to at a distance.
Basically settling bar bets, which is my Amazon Echo does three things in my house. It turns on and off lights, it's a kitchen timer, and it settles bar bets.
Right. Yeah.
It's the most expensive bar bet setting device.
Right. But I'm only bringing that up like that's what I typically work in, but I'm sure there's a million different things that are new, right? So in that case, how would
But none of that's new. That's my point. You're focused on the product, not the experience.
Mm-hmm.
The experience is the same experience. People have been settling bar bets since the bar was invented. And so my guess is Socrates and Plato wanted to, were making bets and hoping someone had a way to look up the answer. This is not a new experience. There are virtually no new experiences. There are just new ways to do the experiences.
So can I bring up another product then, just as another example?
Sure.
That was kind of another example would be speech synthesis that is used in multiple places, and we're trying to create speech synthesis that has certain qualities to it that will make it easier to understand, easier to process what you're hearing, that type of thing. That could be another example of something that's not only found in those like in Amazon Echo type things, but might be found in a lot of places. So just speech synthesis as a category, that would be another example. Sure.
But what is the experience, right? Is it speech synthesis in a noisy train station, sort of like, the BART announcements? And is that the context that we're talking about, or is this speech synthesis for someone who English is a second language, or maybe has a hearing impairment and can't hear certain frequencies? So because those have different frustrations, any product that solves those frustrations is going to have to do that differently. And so the experience that we're talking about here is really key. And what you keep talking about are the functionality of the product, but the functionality of the product doesn't exist in a vacuum. we have to focus in on what is the experience. Is the experience of synthesis the experience used teaching young children how to read? Is it the experience that is happening in a cockpit where you're using voice messaging for alerts and various types of signals? I mean, those are very different experiences. So whatever product you build has to be different, but the experience isn't new. Cockpits have had alerts since the first planes were created. We've been teaching children how to read since we invented children. So there's all we're doing is adapting products into existing experiences. There is no notion of new when you focus on the human experience. All this has happened before, and all this will happen again.
Right. So,
we
but
all.
in the sense of that first, taking a picture of what's happening in the current experience, I guess I was wondering how does that change, or does that change? Are there situations where that part of the process changes? I think that's kind of what.
Not really. Because whatever you produce has to be better than what's out there.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? If it's not an improvement over what's out there, why are you building it?
Right. So then in that picture, then we're just talking about things that are happening before or after, kind of like what you were talking about, looking at the experience beyond just that little zeroing in on experience with whatever software.
Right. You want to focus on the solution, but I'm telling you, the problems that you have to solve are completely tied to the current experience, and the current experience is not tied to the solution at all.
Yeah. Cool. No, I think you answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's I'm glad I was able to pull that off. Excellent. Angela, who should we talk to next?
We have a question from Suzanne Curry, I'm sorry. And their question is that they've been mashing up journey maps and Lean's value stream maps that define the value from a variety of perspectives. Then we can evaluate the value of the journey/stream against a human-centered definition of value. Then there's a gap. What advice do you have for representing that gap?
Oh, that's interesting. Suzanne, can you say more about where your gap comes from?
Yeah, you bet. The gap comes from, well, it could come in a number of ways, but it could come in the evaluation of the quality of the journey against an ideal future or an ideal experience in the wild. Like, products and services are not necessarily in the wild. They may be used in the wild. They themselves don't come from the wild, right? Out there in the world.
Okay.
And so we're attempting to define value to someone's life as they live it, weaving into the fabric of their lives and all the reality that entails. And so there can be quite a gap. I'm working in severe mental illness and substance use disorder, quite a gap between life lived in the wild and the problems that are experienced there, and then the value that a company is trying to achieve.
Okay. But the value isn't what the company's trying to achieve. The value is the improvement to someone's life.
That is the value. You're right. And so there can be quite a gap. And the gap can result in impacts in common everyday scenarios and frequent but important scenarios, rare and critical scenarios. And so just trying to think about how to represent that gap, so that the impact on people's lives is clearer. And so that it creates that enthusiasm for making the changes and solving the problems.
Right. But you have to start with the experience that people are having.
Yeah. That's the journey.
Okay. So the experience that people are having, their journeys.
Yeah, journeys, infinite journeys. There are not just a few.
Right. Well, there's a finite number of people, so there's a finite number of journeys. It could be a very large number.
Okay.
So it may feel infinite. But it's the patterns in the journeys that we're most interested in, because any given solution has to probably, until we get to some future where we can make everything unique, any given solution has to be created to match multiple people's. It's funny, I was having this conversation just this morning because I have a lot of customers who work in government. And in the commercial world, you try and figure out what are the common attributes of the people who would be most profitable to the organization, so that you can build a solution that matches their needs enough that they're willing to exchange money for your service. So that's, you know, the notion of value is the amount of money that they're willing to exchange for the service. So and then you work outwards from that group, trying to get more and more people in that group that you're serving to then therefore generate more value. In government, you actually look for the people who have been historically marginalized, who've been historically ignored, and you focus on, for which government is doing a crappy job of meeting their needs, and you work your way in. You try to get to, you know, we don't have to help the rich people. We have to help all the people who can't solve every problem with money, unless, of course, we're buying out a failed bank. But this notion of value is that what we're really just trying to do is understand what are the problems to solve. So I think what you're talking about as the gap is what I'm talking about as the problems we have to solve that haven't been solved yet.
I think you're right.
Set a solution.
Yeah. Totally. No, I think you're right. And representing them as, you know, because we use jobs to be done, right? And in jobs to be, it's just, you know, it's a common language and approach. And so that's got its intelligence to leverage. And what's nice about jobs to be done is that there can be a variety of outcomes: functional, social, emotional. And I think the problems can, you know, be in those areas as well, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, jobs to be done has severe flaws, but whatever you're using, you want to focus on the improvement you're making to people's lives.
Yeah. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. We have time for a few more questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat. Label them question for Jared. That way, Angela will know that it's for me and not just a question for the community as a whole. Angela, do we have another question?
We do. Lisa Rose says, RE the value, how do you translate, or how have you translated delight into a dollar figure for the exec whose only question is, how much more will we make or lose by taking the time to do this essential research?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Lisa, can you elaborate on that?
Gosh, I think you touched on it just a little bit ago when you were talking about value. So yeah, how do you convince somebody I'm thinking about people I've worked for who have totally get this. They get that idea of, the user, the experience needs to be delightful. They're the measure of success, their experience. But they're not going to do anything unless they see that it is quantifiable in dollars and cents. How do you quantify this?
Um,
Or how have you done that?
well, there's a bunch of ways to do it. One that we can do is we can look at so one of the things that's really important that I think a lot of people don't realize is that every product or service has an experience associated with it, right? It already exists. People, if you're not paying attention to the experience that you're delivering in the products or services you produce, then chances are it's not a very good experience. Nobody creates great experiences accidentally. So what that means is that the experience you're having is likely to be a poor experience. And since it's likely to be a poor experience, the poor experiences have this unusual attribute, which is that they almost always cost the organization money. When people are having a poor experience, they call support. When they are can't figure something out, they need some sort of training. They give up with the product or service and switch to somebody else, you lose sales. You deliver features that nobody uses, you're spending money on waste. All of these things create problems for the organization. And so one place you can start is by calculating what are usually ongoing costs from poor UX and talk about how those costs are unnecessary. If we fix the experience, then that's a one-time fee. But if people keep calling support over and over again because something in the design is not obvious or clear and they don't know how to use it for its purpose, those are ongoing costs and they add up, and they can add up to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So that's one way to express it. The other is to look at, the change between the current experience and the better future, because that change between what we keep delivering if we don't do the research versus what could be better if we did the work, that difference there, that vision that we outline, that is what we have to understand, right? And usually we don't have to work too hard to imagine this. We can take the evidence that the organization already has about what people are frustrated by, what people are asking for, what other competitors are doing in the market, and we can talk to a future that is dramatically improved over the future we will have if we just keep doing what we're doing. And if we do a good job of describing this, it'll be blatantly obvious why people would want it. And if we can if we can talk about why people want it, the money opportunity is there, because anything people desperately want, they'll pay for. I mean, that's the underlying premise of capitalism. So we can, it doesn't take a lot of convincing. The issue is that if nobody has an imagination as to what the better product could be, it probably means that the product really doesn't have a purpose in the world. And that's the thing that I see that teams get into trouble, is that they have actually created a solution for which there are no problems. An example of this might be blockchain, or Chat GPT. These are things that are solutions looking for a problem. Does that make sense, Lisa?
It does totally. Yeah. Yeah. I've worked on enough junk. And I understand. Yep.
So how does that change your thinking on this?
It doesn't change my thinking. It sort of confirms my thinking,
Okay.
actually.
Oh, that works.
Thank you.
Works. Wonderful.
Thanks, Jared.
Wonderful. Okay. Angela, do we have another question here?
Yes, we do. And please correct me if I mispronounce the questioner's name. Shaul Nemetsov. Their question is, how do you reconcile trying to improve people's lives and do your job as a UX professional to satisfy stakeholders?
Shaul, can you say more about this? Did we get your name close? You'll probably need to unmute. I don't know if you can unmute or not.
I invited Shaul to unmute.
Okay.
We'll see if he can figure
Okay, well, in the chat, he wrote, often the company wants the UX solution, but not really beneficial for the user. Well, it's a privileged perspective to say, why do they need UX people at that point? It's not really a UX solution if it's not beneficial to the user. It's just a different implementation. So there's my thinking is that there is no difference here. There's nothing to reconcile between improving people's lives and satisfying stakeholders. There's plenty of other people in the company who will work to just do what stakeholders want and not care about what the users need. This is not what UX people bring to the table. It's sort of like hiring salespeople, but not letting them actually sell anything. It's not a good use of resources. That's my take, but that is a privileged perspective. Not everybody has the choice to be able to go off and change jobs after they discover that what they're being asked to do is not what they thought they would be asked to do. But the reality is I think, and there's plenty of evidence that despite the fact, the slew of layoffs that have been happening lately, the market for UX people has been growing tremendously, And these are organizations that actually do see value in having better user experiences. They just don't know how to envision what that looks like. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to paint that picture. Okay. We do have time for another question if somebody has one. I don't know if
Last call.
if we have any more, but I do invite you to come be a part of our Leaders of Awesomeness community, which if you're on the YouTube, the easiest way to find it is to just Google Leaders of Awesomeness, and it should be one of the first results in the list. This is the link to it. I've put into the chat in Zoom. You can feel free to sign up and be a part of that, and it's free.
So Jared, I'm going to jump in with a question that's not directly about what you've been speaking about now, but maybe some of the people in the Zoom room are unfamiliar with how UIE and Center are connected and disconnected.
Oh, well, we're one company.
Now we're one company. Okay.
Yes, yeah, we've been one company since 2016. They're both companies that I helped start because I had too much free time, but I've solved that problem now.
Good.
But both companies basically are professional development, or the one company is now professional development. Center was created to start a UX design school, which we launched in 2016, and UIE, which has been around since 1988, was created to do professional development for organizations to help them deliver better design products and services. And so it was a natural marriage of the two businesses, one to help people new to the field and the other to help people who've been in the field. So those are that's what we do. And we talk about UX strategy and UX education and all the things of that nature.
Great, thanks. Okay, folks.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call it. I really appreciate, Jared, you're staying up late with us, because I know it's almost midnight where you are, and I don't want to see you turn into a pumpkin, so I'm going to let you go. And I appreciate very much you're making your 4th appearance on the Bake High stage with us this evening. And I look forward to hearing more from you soon, perhaps on a Monday.
Thank you very much for encouraging my behavior.
You bet. And thank you all for showing up too. And we had people who stayed for the whole time. That was a big group that stayed for the whole time. So thanks.
Yeah.
Next month, second Tuesday of the month, we'll be here. Join us. Thank you very much.